Breanna Stewart has never shied away from complex roles, but this time, the overlap could be dangerous. As a leading voice on the WNBA Executive Committee and co-creator of Unrivaled, her influence stretches across both sides of the professional basketball landscape. Critics are now questioning whether that dual role is compromising negotiations. With the WNBA entering a state of frozen operations, no trades.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
No free agency, no player movement. The optics surrounding Stewart's potential conflict of interest couldn't be more damning, especially when her alternative league stands to gain from any fallout within the WNBA. This moment was supposed to be different. After years of fighting for attention, the WNBA finally captured it. Record viewership, surging sponsorships, and players like Caitlin Clark becoming household names created the ideal launchpad. Instead, the missed CBA deadline on January 9th marked the start of a shutdown that's exposed every structural flaw the league has spent decades avoiding. Owners demand proof of sustained growth before embracing change. Players demand a salary system that reflects their value now, not 5 years ago. While both sides posture, the clock is ticking. And history shows that fans, especially new ones, don't wait around during labor disputes. What could have been a defining era for the league now risks becoming a permanent setback. The WNBA is frozen. Not in a metaphorical, poetic way. Literally frozen. No signings. No trades. No qualifying offers. Free agency didn't just stall. It was shut down, blocked off, sealed until further notice. And it all started on January 9th, when the deadline to reach a new collective bargaining agreement came and went without resolution. Just like that, what should have been a celebratory offseason, filled with big moves and rising hype, turned into a bureaucratic staring contest between the WNBA and its players' union. This was supposed to be the beginning of the Caitlin Clark era, the start of a new chapter, one that finally pushed the league into the cultural mainstream. Instead, the league is making headlines for the worst possible reason. Nobody can agree on how to move forward, and now everything's at a standstill. Let's get into it. Both the WNBA and the Women's National Basketball Players Association had every reason to ride the wave of momentum coming off a record-breaking season. Ratings? Through the roof. Arenas? Selling out. Merch? Flying off shelves. This wasn't just hype. It was a measurable, historic shift in attention. And a huge chunk of it was because of Caitlin Clark, a rookie who pulled more eyeballs in one season than the league had seen in decades. So what did the league do with that attention? It stalled out. It let a critical labor deadline lapse, failed to agree on new terms, and then scrambled to apply a temporary bandage in the form of a mutually agreed-upon moratorium. Translation: both sides agreed to freeze player movement while they sort out the new deal. But here's the problem. That agreement to pause everything didn't happen cleanly. The league's initial freeze proposal wasn't just a neutral hold. It came with added language, legalese that the union saw as ownership trying to slip in extra control mechanisms under the radar. Red flag. The union rejected it, citing concerns that the fine print was designed to quietly maintain team leverage even during the freeze. That rejection led to a weekend-long back and forth. The union sent a counteroffer. The league delayed its response until Monday afternoon. Only then did they both agree to stop all free agency activity. This wasn't just an administrative delay. It was a full display of how fractured this relationship really is. Even agreeing not to move forward turned into a drawn-out, suspicious, overly complicated negotiation. If that's the energy now, what's going to happen when they actually sit down to talk money, freedom, and structure? Let's be clear, this is not about semantics. It's about power. And what's at the heart of that power struggle? Two things: player autonomy and revenue distribution. The union wants unrestricted free agency. No more core designations. No more artificial constraints. Just the ability for players to move freely at the end of their contracts, like their male counterparts do in the NBA. The core designation, essentially the WNBA's franchise tag, lets teams lock in a top player for an extra year on a supermax deal, limiting where that player can go. It's great for teams, not so great for the athletes whose careers it affects. And then there's the money. Players are arguing that the compensation framework currently in place is outdated, built for a time when the league's financial reality was much, much smaller. But now, the numbers don't lie. Viewership is at an all-time high. Merch sales are breaking records. Sponsorships are bigger and more frequent. The WNBPA's position is simple. If we're helping grow the pie, we deserve a bigger slice. Ownership, on the other hand, is not so eager to open the checkbook. Their position is that while the recent success is exciting, it might be a short-term spike. One breakout star does not guarantee long-term sustainability. So they're holding back, asking for proof of continued growth before agreeing to restructure salaries or make sweeping changes. That's the philosophical divide. The players want to capitalize on the moment, while the league wants to slow things down. And in the meantime, nobody moves. Now at another layer, Breanna Stewart, superstar, union leader, and co-founder of Unrivaled, a new 3-on-3 winter league. Yeah, that's where it gets tricky, because while she's one of the key figures in the CBA negotiations, she's also building a potential competitor to the WNBA. And that raises a very real conflict of interest concern. Stewart has said she's managing both roles responsibly, but critics aren't so sure. If the WNBA stalls or players grow frustrated, her league, Unrivaled, benefits. More talent available, more eyes looking for alternatives, more leverage in every direction. Whether that's intentional or not, it's a messy optic. And in a negotiation already filled with distrust and delays, that kind of dual loyalty only adds fuel to the fire. Meanwhile, the fans? They're getting nothing. No games, no trades, no announcements, just silence. And that's the most dangerous part, because the league is not operating from a position of security. This is still a developing product, a business that's fighting for legitimacy every year. And while diehard fans will wait, the casual ones, the ones who just showed up because of the Clark effect, they'll disappear. Fast. Look at history. The NHL lost an entire season in 2004-05 over a labor dispute. It never fully recovered its audience. The NBA's 2011 lockout shortened a season and turned fans off for months. Every time there's a work stoppage, leagues lose ground. And the WNBA doesn't have any to spare. It's not just about PR, it's about survival. You cannot build momentum and then stop without consequences, especially when the market is just starting to believe in you. Add in the fact that a strike or lockout could happen without warning, and the instability only grows. No requirement for advance notice means every day is a maybe. Teams can't plan. Players can't commit. Sponsors can't project return. Everyone's waiting for someone else to blink first. This is what happens when strategic vision takes a back seat to tactical one-ups. Everyone's guarding their position, but no one is steering the ship. And the longer it lasts, the more likely the moment slips away completely. The public interest is not infinite. The Caitlin Clark wave? That's not guaranteed to last forever. If there's no basketball, there's no story. If there's no movement, there's no headlines. And if there's no resolution, there might not be a season. What's worse? The solution isn't even that complicated. The players are asking for fair pay tied to new revenue. They're asking for freedom of movement that matches the league's own growth. The league, meanwhile, is acting like a cautious investor, demanding stability before making commitments. But there's a middle ground. There's a way to share new profits without blowing the budget. There's a way to modernize contracts without creating chaos. The problem isn't the math. It's the will. And right now, the clock is ticking. Not just on free agency, but on relevance, trust, and momentum. This could have been the start of something big. Instead, it's looking like the start of another delay. Let us know where you stand. Are the players right to push now while the league is hot? Or should the WNBA wait for more stability before making big changes? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like the video if you think this freeze is blowing a massive opportunity. And don't forget to subscribe, because this story is still developing, And something tells us this won't be the last time the league fumbles the moment. Here's the brutal truth no one on either side seems willing to say out loud. This isn't just a labor standoff. It's a referendum on whether the WNBA is prepared to act like a real major league. Because right now, it doesn't look like it. We're watching a league that finally reached the top of the hill just sit there. No celebration, no sprint forward. Just confusion, hesitation, and a whole lot of internal drama. And at the exact moment when the public I was finally paying attention, the product vanished. Not metaphorically. The actual product, the players, the games, the action has been shelved. Think about that. After years of trying to pull new fans in, the WNBA finally found its viral star in Caitlin Clark. She had everyone watching, fans who had never once cared about the league before were tuning in. Sports media, TV networks, social platforms. They were all ready to make room for the WNBA. The lights were on, the cameras were rolling, and now we're staring at a blank stage. Because instead of locking in that momentum, the league and the players' union are locked in a procedural war. What started as a negotiation about long overdue updates to player rights and compensation has spiraled into total paralysis. Nobody's moving, nobody's playing, and nobody knows when it ends. Let's not sugarcoat what this freeze means. It means front offices can't build their rosters. It means players can't sign deals. It means coaches don't know who's showing up for camp. It means fans have nothing to look forward to. And every single day that passes without movement is another chip off the league's credibility. There's this misguided belief that the audience will wait because this is just part of doing business. But that logic only works if your business is already unshakable. The WNBA? It's still in the building phase, which means when the train stops, people don't just sit quietly, they get off. And right now, that train is sitting in the middle of nowhere. Engines off, windows fogged, no ETA in sight. The irony is almost unbearable. The league's growth over the last year isn't speculation. It's measurable. Record ratings, record sales, sold-out crowds in cities that used to struggle to fill half an arena. And yes, a lot of that was fueled by Clark, but the effect wasn't isolated to her. It lifted everything. More attention meant more players getting their names out there, more stories being told, more reasons to care. And how is that momentum being rewarded? With a complete freeze of the league's most important off-season period. And again, the players have a point. They've been operating under a salary structure that was built for a version of the WNBA that barely exists anymore. When that framework was put in place, revenue was stagnant, interest was low, and sponsors were reluctant. That's changed, but the contracts haven't. So when they ask for unrestricted free agency and the removal of the core designation, they're not asking for the moon. They're asking for basic agency over their careers, something players in other major leagues already have. They're asking to be treated as the professionals they are, not as pieces to be strategically hoarded by teams year after year. And the core designation? Let's really sit with that. It's a rule that lets a team hold on to its best player, even if that player's contract is up, by applying a one-year Supermax tag. Sounds generous, until you realize it limits movement, blocks negotiation leverage, and keeps players stuck. It's a system built for owners, not athletes. The union wants it gone. And in this current climate, with money flowing in and attention at an all-time high, they're pushing now because waiting another cycle means missing the moment. But ownership isn't budging. Not because they think the players are wrong, but because they're scared. Scared that all of this success might be temporary. Scared that if they raise salaries and remove player restrictions, they'll be stuck if the hype dies down. They want stability before they commit, which on the surface sounds smart. But the problem? That hesitation is the instability. When you have new fans coming in, you don't meet them with a frozen product. You don't tell sponsors to hold tight while we argue over legal language. You don't leave your players and your biggest star twisting in the wind. You show confidence. You show vision. You build, where you risk it all collapsing. And speaking of risk, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The nuclear options. On one side, ownership can initiate a lockout. On the other, the players have already voted to strike if necessary. And neither side is required to give notice. That means this whole thing could detonate at any moment. No warning, no prep, just blackout. That's not just stressful. It's devastating for planning, sponsorships, marketing, media partnerships, everything the league depends on. It keeps players in a state of limbo. It keeps fans guessing. It keeps everyone nervous. And in a league trying to prove its stability, nothing says we're not ready, like being one bad email away from total shutdown. Add to that the role of Breanna Stewart. Not only is she a superstar and a WNBA executive committee member, she's also co-founder of Unrivaled, a competing 3-on-3 league launching in the winter. Which means, while she's negotiating on behalf of the players, she also stands to benefit from WNBA delays. If the WNBA drags this out, Unrivaled gets more attention, more players available, more spotlight. She says she's balancing both roles responsibly. But the optics? They're not great. Conflict of interest or not, it introduces a layer of doubt that's hard to ignore. And in a moment where trust is already paper thin, that kind of distraction doesn't help anyone. So now we're left with a league that has more attention than ever and less direction than ever. No resolution in sight. No schedule to rally around. Just fans sitting in comment sections wondering if they'll even have a season to watch. And the worst part? It's all so preventable. This could have been the off-season where the WNBA reintroduced itself to the world, where it doubled down on success, modernized its structure, and showed fans and players alike that it was ready for the big leagues. Instead, it's stuck in the same place it's been for years, fighting itself while the moment slips away. Because this isn't about whether the league will exist. It's about whether it can thrive. Can it act like the rising brand it claims to be? Can it support the players fueling its growth? Can it make bold decisions when the spotlight demands it? Or will it keep tripping over old habits, outdated systems, and behind-the-scenes infighting? That's the question fans are left asking. That's the message potential sponsors are reading between the lines. And that's the storm the league created for itself. No one's asking for perfection, just progress, just clarity, just leadership that rises to meet the moment instead of managing it into the ground. But if we keep hearing nothing, if the freeze drags on, and the CBA remains unresolved, and the league keeps acting like it is all the time in the world, then the question won't be, when will the WNBA start again? It'll be, how did they lose it all right when it finally got good? There's a certain kind of disappointment that hits harder when it's rooted in potential. And right now, that's exactly what the WNBA is dealing with. This isn't a league in crisis because it's failing. It's a league in crisis because it's succeeding and can't figure out what to do with that success. The last year brought everything the WNBA had been working toward for decades. Visibility, engagement, cultural relevance. But instead of using that moment to push forward, the league is tied up in internal disputes and leadership gridlock. It's almost poetic in a tragic way. Just as the WNBA finally gets invited to the table, it starts flipping it over in front of everyone. And let's be real, public perception matters. Whether you're a fan, a sponsor, or a media outlet trying to decide where to invest your attention, what's happening right now sends one loud, clear message. This league is not ready to operate at the level it's asking for. Every day this freeze continues. Every day the new CBA goes unsigned is another signal to the world that the WNBA can't manage its own growth. And that's dangerous, because when the league asks for bigger broadcast deals, when it wants deeper sponsor commitments, when it tries to expand into new markets, what's going to be the first question asked? Can they even keep the season on schedule? Right now, the answer isn't looking great. And let's not pretend this situation is just some complicated, high-level labor issue that fans can't possibly understand. No, what fans see is this. Their new favorite player showed up, lit up the court, turned the league into must-watch TV, and then the league stopped moving. Caitlin Clark came in hot and instantly became one of the biggest names in American sports. She brought people who had never watched a WNBA game in their life into the conversation. She made games sell out in hours. She made highlight reels that went viral every week. And now she's supposed to sit and wait while grown adults argue over terminology in a temporary freeze document? That's the kind of story casual fans don't stick around for. That's how you lose the spark. And without that spark, all this talk about momentum starts to feel like marketing fluff. Let's not forget, this isn't even a full-blown work stoppage yet. This is the pre-fight over the rules of engagement. And already, the situation is tense enough to put the entire season at risk. No one's locked out yet. No one's walked off the court. But the mere threat of it, hanging in the air with no warning required, makes everything feel fragile. Players don't know when or where they'll be signed. Teams can't finalize rosters. Coaches can't prep for camp. Sponsors can't plan activations. And fans? They just hear static. There's only so long you can ask people to stay tuned before they start tuning out. What's worse is how easy this should be to fix. The league and the union both want to see the WNBA grow. They both know this surge of interest is a rare gift. And they both have valid points. The union wants to ensure players are compensated fairly in line with the rising value they're bringing. The league wants to make sure it's not overextending itself on what could be a temporary wave. But instead of coming together to meet this moment with clarity and purpose, they're letting old habits, slow negotiation, mistrust, and overcomplication undermine everything. This isn't the time for procedural gridlock. This is the time for vision, for leadership, for putting egos and control tactics aside and asking, what serves the future of the WNBA? Because if that question doesn't become the priority, and fast, there may not be much of a future left to serve. So here we are, a league with more attention than ever, a player base more empowered than ever, and a fan base more interested than ever. And somehow, still, the action is frozen. The opportunity is slipping. And the only thing moving is time. Tell us what you think. Is this freeze justifiable? Are the players right to push now? Or is the league smart to be cautious? Tap like if you're done watching potential turn into disappointment. And subscribe if you want the real story behind sports' biggest meltdowns. Because if the WNBA doesn't act soon, this one's going to be historic.